Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions regarding this watch. Today we're discussing the Greubel Forsey Balancier Convexe, a watch that represents the best of Greubel Forsey tradition in a sports watch case that is titanium, water resistant, and thanks to luminescence, also visible in the dark. There's a lot to love here, including the rarely seen Greubel Forsey full integrated grade 5 titanium bracelet. So this watch is made of grade 5 titanium, so though it is large, it is not particularly heavy. Ergonomics, very good. 43.5 millimeters if we measure from side to side, not including the crown. Now, if we measure from edge to edge, that's actually the lug-to-lug dimension of the case. That is going to be 46.4 millimeters. The watch is 14.7 millimeters thick. But if we measure the rigid-most outcropping of the bracelet from side to side, the total rigid, incompressible distance across the wrist, it's actually a pretty beefy 60 millimeters. So you got to remember that this watch wears very differently compared to some of the convex models that are on straps. So on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, we'll get a sense of the fit of this unconventionally spec'd watch. It actually fits just fine. There is enough clearance that I could wear this watch comfortably. And you can see it is thick, there's no getting around that. But when you look at the edge of the bezel, just focus on the edge of the bezel, not the edge of the bracelet. The edge of the bezel is nowhere near the edge of my wrist on either side, so the fit's quite good. If your wrist is my size or larger, this is going to be a match. Taking a look at the bracelet, it's what you'd expect from Greubel Forsey. It's quite impressive in detail. It has a combination of satin. You can also see polished highlights, and then media blasted recesses. It doesn't really look like anything else, and it does properly look integrated into the case flowing into lugs, flowing into bracelet. It then tapers down toward the clasp, and you can see that when I squeeze the micro adjustment mechanism here, there's a release and there's a micro adjustment rack. See that little system? The rack and the lock? This allows me to fine tune the fit in or out. Let me demonstrate how this works. It's a little bit different than what you might expect since you have to move the actual retaining bar. See the little retaining bar there? It requires you to push down, not just push the buttons in. But once you get it, you have quite a range of adjustability. It's considerably more incrementally adjustable than an all-or-nothing fold, like, for example, Rolex Easy Link. Just remember, you can't just squeeze. You have to push down. And so it's really designed to be adjusted when on the wrist, not in the hand. Taking a quick look, you can see we have a thick grade 5 titanium swing arm. Close that up. It's a trigger release system, just like that. Now, if you take a quick look, and find this, I always like to focus on who makes what. You can see it says BRO in here. This is very similar to the clasp system that you'll find on Longa, IWC, Glasuta Original. It's made by Bracelet, and you can see Braclet's BRO signature inside of the clasp. They're likely the ones who make the rest of the bracelet, because you've seen this fully removable bracelet system on IWCs, and in fact, and that's the same supplier, Bracelet. So you can see every single link is removable, meaning you're going to get a really good fit. With every link removable, you can fine-tune to the nth degree. Now, all of this is grade 5 titanium, which means it's both lighter than steel because it's the grade 5 stuff. It's also more scratch-resistant than steel, so though this is a pre-owned watch, it is still in very good condition. You can also see there's a lot of beveling and micro-polishing, small recesses, media-blasted hollows all over the bracelet and the case flank. In an organic form, you can see why they call this the Convexe collection. Satination atop the bezel, side to side. Note that the bezel and the crystal are immensely complex in form. It's not easy to get 100-meter water resistance with a crystal that complex, and time, energy, and money was spent to make this a 100-meter watch. We'll do a quick loom shot here, get a good sense of how it looks in the dark. You can see it's actually quite well loomed. You can see all the indices, you can see the hour and minute hands, no problems there. So, the movement. It's based on the double Balancier that came out in 2016, the idea being that you have a spherical 4-minute differential between two balances that are opposed from each other with opposite orientation of their hairsprings, each one inclined at 30 degrees, and so they're always slightly at odds with respect to gravity. And you can see, because the idea is they are always equal and opposite due to the orientation of the hairspring, their rotational opposition, and then their unique slant with respect to gravity. These will effectively cancel each other out instantaneously because of their equal but opposite qualities. When one is made to run fast by gravity, the other, by an equal and opposite margin, will slow down, and then the differential, which you can see is on a 4-minute rotation, it will average out the two, instantaneously canceling the effect of gravity, something that a tourbillon could do on a pocket watch, but not necessarily on a wristwatch where the orientations change unpredictably. So this is a solution for gravitationally induced timing deviation that is specific to a wristwatch. It also has a lot in common with some rare school watches made in Switzerland in the 20th century, and very similar in concept to Philippe Dufour's Duality from the 1990s, just a little bit more sophisticated in its implementation. Now, looking at them individually, you can see the balances are beaten away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, so 3 hertz. They are free sprung, so all of the timing is set using hairspring manipulation as well as the poising screws on the balance. It's a very precise and shock tolerant system. You can see overcoils are used on each side. Those improve the isochronous behavior of the balances, further canceling out effects of gravity that might be caused by the unequal weighting through 360 degrees of something like a flat hairspring, so the overcoil helps with that. And being a balance bridge rather than a balance cock, it's anchored on both sides, giving it greater shock tolerance. Of course, 6-position adjustment is applied. You can see that each bridge is mirror finished, and so is the bridge structure for the differential. Now we have grade 5 titanium bridges and plates. This watch is titanium inside, titanium outside. We have 2 coaxial fast-moving barrels, the idea being that with fast-moving barrels, there's less fluctuation in mainspring torque. It winds up with a very flat plateau, and they provide 72 hours of manually wound power reserve. Because the differential does not display seconds, there is a small running seconds display. And you can see that there's a Reho outboard against which you can read hours and individual minutes. The base plate and the bridges are media blasted, but you can see that some of the edges, such as the edge of the bridge adjacent to the barrel, as well as the edges of the structure bearing the differential, those have been micro-beveled on their side. The same treatment applied to the balance bridges, all screw heads black polished with chamfered slots in circumference. And if you look carefully, you can see that the wheels have also been satinated quite nicely. Now, I've been very open about the fact that many of the Greubel Forsey sports watches have been toned down and pegged back a little bit compared to the usual standard of complexity and finish, and that's strictly in the interest of increasing volume and decreasing prices. This is not one of those watches. This is a watch that represents Greubel Forsey blue sky imagination and invention at its best, and it just happens to be a sports watch. Now, another important thing to note is that this is part of a series of 66, but you should realize that not all of those 66 were made in a single year. It's more like about 1/4 of that per year. So don't think that all of a sudden in a year when the company made, let's say, 400 to 450 watches, 66 of them were a single model. So no, it'll be a slow production run, and that's how Greubel Forsey is running its limited editions these days, with the exception of some very small editions. Editions numbering in the dozens will be stretched over multiple model years. Now you can see on the reverse side the underpinning of the spherical differential, and that too has been beautifully polished and beveled. And then we have blackened and media blasted. You can see this plate surrounding a white gold 1 of 166 badge, and then we have golden chaton holding the pivot jewels. Greubel Forsey out of La Chaux-de-Fonds always loves to pay tribute to the pocket watch making heritage of the region, and of course golden chaton for pivot jewels would have been used on pocket watches back in the 18th and 19th century, so there is a lot to love right here. It's a watch that quite literally has 2 heartbeats. It sounds like nothing else. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.